Welcome back, friends. For today, in the next few episodes, we're looking at the Beatitudes, um, confession, and our journey towards Easter. So, blessed are the poor in spirit, humility and dependence. The Beatitude text. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Matthew 5:3. Aquinas, virtue and gift. Aquinas treats the first Beatitudes as foundational. It corresponds to humility and is perfected by the gift of the fear of the Lord. Poverty of spirit is not material destitution. It is interior dependence. It is the recognition that all good is received. For Aquinas, humility restrains the inordinate desire for excellence. It does not deny gifts, it orders them. Pride, by contrast, is not merely arrogance. It is the refusal to acknowledge dependence on God as first principle and last end. Augustine identifies pride as the beginning of all sin because it turns the soul inward upon itself rather than upward toward God. The restless heart seeks stability in itself, but only God is stable. Poverty of spirit corrects this curvature. It restores the soul to truth. The gift of fear of the Lord deepens humility. It is not servile fear. It is reverence before the infinite goodness of God. Poverty of spirit is the beginning of wisdom because it places the soul in reality. This is why the first beatitude promises the kingdom. The kingdom belongs to those who do not attempt to possess it. Disordered appetite healed. The disorder healed here is self-sufficiency. It manifests as control, spiritual performance, or quiet resentment at dependence. We often attempt to secure worth through competence, knowledge, or moral effort. Even in religious life, identity can become achievement. But Aquinas insists that grace precedes merit. What we receive from God cannot be claimed as possession. When the appetite seeks autonomy rather than reception, fatigue follows. Poverty of spirit restores creaturely truth. It acknowledges that we are sustained and not self-originating. So we're linking this particular virtue to the Lenten pillar of prayer. So we got our Beatitudes, we have our Lenten pillars, we're using it for confession. And we will have a practical handbook, Mother Love, which is going to get woven in here as we move forward. So our examination of conscience. Examine this Beatitude structure. How you like that? Structurally. We're going to look at them structurally.
Well, grammar's important.
That's right.
Grammar matters.
Grammar does matter. And so here are some structural questions to consider. Where do I resist dependence on God? Where do I seek affirmation more than truth? Where have I subtly believed that my efforts secure my worth? Where do I become irritated? That's always a gold mine. Where do I become irritated when corrected or overlooked? Poverty of spirit asks whether I receive my life as gift.
I was going to say in regards to that is poverty always seems, well, I mean, it is, I guess, in some sense a negative, right? I mean, it's not a positive attribute. To not have something is a negative attribute. And so we don't really enjoy it per se. But to be able to engage with the reality of the self, you have to start from where you are. And I think oftentimes, we do, especially in the American mindset, there is an element of, pick yourself up by your bootstraps kind of concept that I think has some means of interfering with that awareness that poverty should be the base, right? That should be the starting point of everything that we do. which means then that you can look at things equitably, right? Anything that is given to you can be perceived as something, right, which is a positive, even if it's not what you wanted. So our Lord can use that poverty, and we can begin to approach whether he sends us what are, recognizable blessings, right? Like if suddenly you found a $10 bill on the street, right? I mean, that would be a great blessing, right? But it would equally be a blessing if you lost $10, right? Because you can begin to engage with God working in your life from that equilibrium of poverty, and then you can begin to appreciate how he how he balances that out with elements that may feel negative or painful, with those things which we could call desolations, and those things that are good and beautiful that we would perceive as consolation. But both of those are would become the equalizers to our base. If poverty is the fulcrum, right, then that slide, or the balance that goes back and forth between those two, become easier to embrace, I think.
That's true. So we have confessional preparation and our Lenten reflection. So confession itself is an act of poverty. To kneel and name sin is to remove self-justification. Aquinas teaches that humility is required for remission of sin because pride resists submission to grace. Traditional penitential manuals formed consciences precisely at this point. They assumed that sin begins in subtle autonomy. The confraternity tradition insists that confession is not merely enumeration of faults, but surrender of self-reliance before divine mercy. Prepare for confession this Lent by naming not only actions, but attitudes of autonomy. Where have I lived as though I were self-originating? Where have I resisted correction? Where have I trusted myself more than God? Absolution restores charity, it returns the soul to receptivity. And the Lenten reflection. Choose one concrete act of dependence this week. It may be a longer period of silent prayer. It may be asking forgiveness without defense. It may be accepting correction without explanation. Let that act touch pride directly. Begin there.
Yes, accepting correction without complaint, and offering sorrow and forgiveness, not forgiveness, but apology without amendment. That's a really hard thing for people to do.
It is a tough one. It's a tough one. We have just a few more seconds, so I'm going to start waving some books. Let's get that wave out of the way. So that confraternity book, here's a little gem. It has been reprinted so beautifully. Mother Love, a manual for Christian mothers. So this is, if you will, the practicum I will be leaning into. So we have our theoretical, the speculative part, not in that we don't know, it's just the higher abstract ideals and then application. Of course, we have Father Jacques Philippe, that's from the last episode, for those who need a little refresher on the Beatitudes in a general way. Um, he's one of my fan favorites, Augustine, the Confessions. I do like this translation, um, translated by Sheed, Fulton Sheed.
Oh yeah.
And last but not least, one of the
Tome.
tomes.
Yes, right. The tome.
One of the tomes. This is the Prima Secunda, questions 1 through 70. The Beatitudes would be in question 69. There's that. You don't actually, Sarah, you have said this so many times, so we have to come back to this. And maybe work because we're at the 10-minute mark.
Mhm.
It's this. I have these books. I love them. I knew some of the authors of some of these, the others. I wish I would have. But you don't need them. You can find all of that on the web.
Yes.
It's a bounty. It's a bounty if we
If you know where to
and
look. Yeah,
know where to look and if we choose to look. Right? It's both things.
right. So
All
that's,
right.
yeah, those are all great books.
They are. They are. We'll wave that manual of mother's love around a few more times. All right, my friends, till the next time. Fides, Ratio.